Every weekday morning, Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp go head-to-head on the day's hottest sports topics. Undisputed with Skip and Shannon weekdays at 9:30 a.m. Eastern only on Fox Sports 1 and streaming live on Fox Sports Go. Welcome back into Drennan Live here on Sportstime Ohio. It's week 1 of the NFL season. Your fantasy football lineups are set, and we're ready to talk to Ryan Fowler, who we have each week here on Drennan Live. And I had my draft last night. Ryan helped me out a little bit, so thank you very much on that. But we have a lot of questions for you, obviously, as we look ahead to the first games and matchups and who they should play. So today is all about the fans and you helping them win their matchup this week. Are you ready for that?
There is a lot of pressure. I do know this. There's a lot of paralysis by analysis with owners that I've been talking to on Twitter. You can't overthink the room in week 1. There is a feeling out period to this. So let's get to it.
I want to win every single matchup, though, so sorry. I know, I'm very into this. But we have a lot of questions to get to, and Drew is first up, and he wants to know if he should play the Raiders defense that he drafted or pick up the Eagles defense and play them against the Browns in week 1.
Yeah, I think the Browns are going to be a target of a lot of people that are streaming defenses. You know, the Raiders are an improved defense, but they have to go to New Orleans. And the one thing the Raiders really were bad at last year, even though they were improved, they allowed a lot of points per game. And we know Drew Brees and that offense, they can score in a hurry. So if you want to stream in the Eagles against the Browns, so be it. Just keep in mind, if Carson Wentz throws a pick 6, that hurts your defense. That's a rookie quarterback out there with not a lot of game time in the NFL. So just keep that in mind. I see the reasoning for the stream. I just think I go with a more veteran unit. The Raiders against the Saints, I would probably feel a little bit safer there. I understand the reasoning, but just remember, Wentz can hurt you too.
Ryan Carroll has our next question. Who is a better PPR flex play, Danny Woodhead, Darren Sproles, or Sterling Shepard?
Again, Sproles being targeted against that Browns defense. We'll hold off on that for a week. You know, we have Ryan Matthews in there. Wentz is still learning. I do think Sproles might be the waiver wire darling in about 5 days, depending on what he does against the Browns. But we'll hold off for week 1. I think Danny Woodhead's the play here. It's a tough matchup against the Chiefs, but that PPR value, I think they're going to have to find ways to get Woodhead involved to at least have a chance against the Chiefs. You know, Sterling Shepard I like, but more in standard leagues. I think the Giants and Cowboys could be a high-scoring affair. So if you're in a standard league, Sterling Shepard does have some value. And, you know, if you're really coming down to it and you don't like Woodhead against the Chiefs, if you started Shepard, I wouldn't argue with you. I think there's a lot to like in that Giants matchup as far as points to be scored.
Justin's next up. He wants to know if he should start Cam Newton, even though he's going up against the Broncos.
It's a loaded question because I don't know who their quarterback 2 is, but in a vacuum, not knowing anything else, you start Cam Newton. It's a short and sweet answer.
I knew that you were going to say that, I feel.
Yeah.
Derek Dadich, what do you think about Jonathan Stewart or Rashad Jennings instead?
You know, again, it kind of goes back to this matchup and this feeling up here that the Broncos defense is legit. I just look at Jonathan Stewart. He still has to fight Cam Newton for calling his own number. I mean, Cam Newton's going to pick up probably 70 to 90 yards tonight if he has a good game, and that takes away from J-Stu in that situation. So you look at the New York Giants, and they just mentioned a couple days ago that they want to try and get Jennings some goal line work, which will definitely boost his value in 2016. I think Jennings gets the edge over J-Stu on the Thursday night game.
Matthew Gerber also wondering about Cam Newton, but he gives you another option. So he also has Jameis Winston. So what are you thinking between them two?
Yeah, Cam Newton is going to be in for a long game against the Broncos, but I do have him a couple spots higher in my weekly rankings. By the way, you can check out our weekly rankings. Just go to foxsports.com/fantasy. They're updated every Wednesday and Saturday night around midnight. So when you wake up Sunday morning, they are the freshest rankings that we can have. But yeah, Cam Newton, a few spots higher. Jameis does have a delicious matchup against the Falcons. I like Jameis Winston in a lot of instances. It's just Cam can do so much with his legs. More so than Jameis as we start to learn a little bit more about him in year 2. Cam gets the edge over Jameis.
Again, we're talking to Ryan Fowler of FoxSports.com, our fantasy expert, and we're continuing with questions. Michael Thomas would like to know, will Sproles have a good game against the Browns defense, do you think? So you just got to go with this. I mean, talking Browns here, again, you said. Yeah. So what are you thinking about Sproles?
Yeah, Sproles is going to be one of those guys where there were some whispers, and I think part of the question is because of a report earlier today that they were interested in using Sproles in the red zone, the Eagles, that is. And when LaShawn McCoy was there, when DeMarco Murray was there, and they were the so-called RB1s, they would call on Sproles inside that 10. Now, that was with Chip Kelly, coaching change heading into 2016, but I think Sproles is going to be one of those waiver wire guys where somebody goes out and reaches for him one week, and then he comes back and has 5 fantasy points, and then he gets dropped the next week. It's going to be a back-and-forth game, and that's only if Matthews stays healthy. Now, if Ryan Matthews, who has this propensity to get hurt, goes on the sidelines, on IR, what have you, he gets these nagging injuries, Sproles is going to be one of those guys that's picked up in a lot of leagues. I wouldn't be surprised if over the last handful of days in drafts, Sproles was picked up strictly for this week 1 matchup.
Mikey Rutt, should he start Devin Funchess?
Short answer is no. I think Funchess, he's going to have a lot of, it's kind of like a cult following down there because Kelvin Benjamin was a stud a couple years ago. He missed all last year with the ACL, and everybody wants to boost Funchess up there. Everybody forgets Greg Olson's a great tight end. Funchess had a good preseason. He had a good summer, and that's why his values went up. I think in this matchup that could be low scoring, or lower scoring than what you would look at. Again, Funchess versus who else does he have? I think when these questions are posed, knowing who else your options are helps in the analysis of it because Funchess by himself, he really doesn't jump off the board to me because I think Kelvin Benjamin, even though he's going to be on limited snaps reportedly, I think Kelvin Benjamin can make an impact in the game.
Jesse Dean wants to know about some running backs. Should he start Jonathan Stewart or Jeremy Hill? It's PPR, but neither of these guys catch many passes, and both are going against tough run defenses.
Give me Jeremy Hill. I think it's going to be one of those games against the Jets where Jeremy Hill, he's going to have to be involved for them to have a chance to win. Jonathan Stewart, like I mentioned earlier, he's fighting a couple different things. Not only is it's the first game under the lights. Cam Newton's going to try and do a lot probably through the air just to see what he has with Funchess and Kelvin Benjamin and Olsen. Jonathan Stewart's one of those guys, too. Again, going against the Broncos defense, it's not the greatest matchup. Jeremy Hill has a tough matchup against the Jets, too. No question about it. I just think if Jeremy Hill gets that 15 to 20 touches, he'll produce a little bit more than I think Jonathan Stewart does projected going into a tough matchup against the Broncos.
Few more. Todd Miller. Again, we're going to ask about Cam Newton, this time against Drew Brees. Which one?
Drew Brees. Drew Brees is going to have a nice game against Oakland. We were talking about streaming the Raiders defense at the top. I think Drew Brees is going to see what he's got with Brandon Cooks for an encore this year. You bring in Michael Thomas. He's got Coby Fleener. Last year, they worked Ben Watson into that offense, and Ben Watson had one of the best seasons of his career. Now we get a younger tight end, maybe a little bit more mobile, a little bit fresher. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in that Raiders game, too. So I would like Drew Brees over Cam Newton. I think the thing is, because we are doing this on Thursday, Cam Newton was going to be a popular choice, not only because it is the first game and people are getting antsy. Like, they drafted Cam Newton probably in the 3rd or 4th round. First game comes around, I don't want anything to do with Cam Newton. This is kind of what comes with the territory.
Angelo Wright, I picked up Zach Ertz. Should I keep him? Do you like him? Or try and pick up another tight end?
Yeah, no, I think Zach Ertz is a fine play for most of 2016. You know, the thought is young quarterbacks, and we have Carson Wentz starting for the Eagles. One of their best friends is a tight end to check down to. I think Jordan Matthews and Nelson Aguilar and Riley Cooper and most of that offense, their value came down a little bit when Sam Bradford left town, and not saying a ton about Sam Bradford, but Carson Wentz, he's got to learn this system. And but between handing off to Ryan Matthews and targeting Zach Ertz, I think Ertz could be in for a pretty big first half of the season if Wentz is developing as the Eagles expect them to do.
Last question comes from Brad, and he wants to know D'Angelo Williams or Frank Gore this week.
D'Angelo Williams all day. Frank Gore, you know, that guy has grinded out a heck of a career with the 49ers and now with the Colts. I think he might be running out of gas. I think D'Angelo Williams has a little bit more left in the tank, and against Washington, I expect him to have a big game.
So we need to remind the fans that you don't need to panic, right? If week 1 is not all that you thought it would be, and there's time to turn things around in case it goes bad in week 1, right?
Well, my advice would be just cut your entire roster and go to the waiver. No, I'm kidding. It'll be fine. We're going to get through this. Each and every week we'll have this little advice segment, and then if you have any questions throughout the week, at Fox Sports Fowler on Twitter, it's going to be fine. Man, it's crazy. The panic and anxiety on Twitter today it's palpable. So it's going to be fun. We're going to get through week one, learn a lot. There's learning about the Browns offense, because there is value there, learning about the Titans running back by committee, Derrick Henry, DeMarco Murray, learning about the Cowboys, Dak Dynasty, Dak Prescott. You got Ezekiel Elliott down there. How does Des Bryant do? A lot to learn in week one.
And we will have you each week here for all the advice, so no one needs to panic, as you said. And you can go on Twitter at Fox Sports Fowler, foxsports.com, all the fantasy advice there. Thank you so much. We will talk to you next week. Again, nobody panic. We're still okay. I'll be texting you for some tips, though, as we go along. Thanks so much, Ryan. Coming up next right here on Drennan Live, lots of big college games coming up. Phil Steele will join Bruce to cover all of that. That's next here on Sportstime Ohio.